Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Rogue Trader with me, Bring It On. Let's explore the bridge and speak with some folks while getting to know the crew. Boxmaster Vigdis. A thin pale woman stands out among the rest of the crew. There's a thick bundle of cables coming out of the back of her skull and disappearing under her ceremonial garment. And you see the grate of a quietly humming vox where her mouth should be. The woman sees you and bows her head in a respectful greeting. How may I serve you, Lord Captain? Sure. Connect me to the vessel's main channel. I wish to bolster the morale of my crew. Boxmaster nods obediently, and presses several switches on the device she is holding. It is done, Lord Captain. You address the crew with a rousing speech and hear your voice roll through the ship, reaching even the normally quiet corners of the vessel. When the broadcast ends, you hear distant shouts of approval. Remind me who you are. Voxmaster Octavius Vigdis Seriata, the Ptolemon dynasty, the current Voxmaster serving aboard your vessel. In accordance with the Seneschal's orders, I assume this duty immediately upon the demise of the esteemed Voxmaster Septimus, who was my grandfather. What are the Voxmaster's duties? I'm the ears and the voice of this void ship. I supervise several dozen officers and 3 times that number of support personnel. We receive, send, encrypt, and decode all incoming and outgoing messages through the ship's internal and external channels. And we also ensure clean communications and the optimal efficiency of the crew's Vox casters. If you ever want to know what worries and concerns your crew are harboring, what your subjects are whispering about in local networks after their watches, and what their leaders are clamoring about over shortwave Vox transmissions, just come and see me. I will satisfy your curiosity. Have the Vox spirits brought you anything interesting lately? Forgive me, Lord Captain. I have no information that would be of interest to you at this moment. Why do you look so strange? My appearance comes from my heritage, generation after generation of people who spent their entire lives in the depths of this void ship. That's a pretty common occurrence in the Imperium. The ships are so large and are constantly... They're too large to land on a planet. And unless you're important enough to go down to the planet's surface, even when you're in orbit, you're stuck on the ship. So families are raised there, children are born. There are millions, maybe trillions of people that have never even been on a planet. Neither we nor our ancestors have ever left our home, but the same can be said about many denizens of the Imperium's million worlds. We're used to the silence of the cosmos and the voices of the ship. There are thousands of us. We dwell far from the Lord Captain's upper decks and remain unseen. We are the Voidborn. Where does the word Voidborn come from? Because we are the children born in the void between the stars, be it the womb of a traveling vessel, an orbital satellite, or forgotten asteroid station. Low gravity, voyages through the warp, and the countless dangers of space travel. Everything others hate and dread is second nature to us. Tell me about the lives of the Voidborn and my crew. To us, the groans, creaks, and murmurs of the ship sound the way babbling brooks and singing birds do to world dwellers. We hear the ship breathe, know what it is feeling and thinking. We are a part of this ship just like it is a part of us. We perform numerous functions, and there are many officers among our number. Some maintain order and prevent mutiny. Others serve as shepherds and support the crew, and some devote themselves to mending the body and spirit of the vessel. Most of the Voidborn are members of large void ship dynasties that bear responsibility for a certain aspect of the ship's life. For 300 years, the main branch of the Ptolemon dynasty has produced the ship's Voxmasters, and most of our subordinates come from the cadets' houses of the dynasty. How do you find life on the ship? Life has been quite generous to me, Lord Captain. I am the Voxmaster, and only the best in the dynasty can become one. By virtue of my skills and position, no one has ever denied me anything. Our family claims a spacious section for its demesne? I'm saying that wrong. I also enjoy long walks through the narrow and dimly lit corridors of the ship, listening to the sounds of her activity, falling asleep and waking up to the chanting of hymns, and admiring the stars beyond, of course. How do others on the ship treat you? We look, speak, and move differently from the inhabitants of the planetary worlds. Our way of life, traditions, and quirks frighten these people just like the darkness of the cosmos. Many believe us to be the bringers of ill fortune, and alas, it is the Voidborn who get the blame for terrible warp phenomena during longer voyages. Victus hesitates before continuing. Several years ago, an unfortunate warp jump caused all the food on board to spoil. 15 days later, a hungry and furious crew nearly massacred everyone in the lower decks, blaming us for the misfortune and hoping to restock the larders with our flesh. I would have been killed during the mutiny had Adira Tlass not shown up in the right place at the right time. She came to my rescue, and the scoundrels' fear of her was even greater than their fear of the Voidborn. It looks like you're close friends with Adira. Webs of tiny wrinkles appear at the corners of Vigdis's eyes, the only hint that the Voxmaster is smiling. The Voidborn seldom make friends, especially among the captain's entourage. But you see, many consider Adira to be different. I am different too. We have spent plenty of time in each other's company, discussing Regicide over a class of Amasek. So Regicide is a board game they play in 40k, a human tabletop game played across the Imperium of Man, similar to the ancient Terran game of chess. An Amasek is an alcoholic drink, a potent alcoholic drink of varying quality, widely available across the Imperium. Except Adira changed after one incident, when we started to drift apart. The death of Lord Captain Theodora made her withdraw even more. I do not know if Adira considers me her friend now, but we used to be very, very close. It is good I can still look after her, in my own way. Interpreting the Voxmaster's emotions based on half a face and a Vox-modulated voice is no easy task, but you manage to catch the undercurrent in Vigdis's words. The Voxmaster is not merely saddened by her rift with Adira, she is devastated by it. Have you ever left the ship? Oh, I did once, and it was dreadful. It felt like the massive blue dome overhead could shatter at any moment and fall. My bones would be crushed by the gravity. Victus twitches her shoulders, trying to ward off the flood of memories. The ship is my home, Lord Captain, and I would not trade it even for the bounty of 100 worlds. I see. Let us return to business. As you wish, Lord Captain. That will be all for now. I live to serve, Lord Captain. I think we'll save the companions for last. Let's talk to the crew first. Reports received confirm that verification is complete. There's an incident in the officers' quarters. A healer team is required. Master Helmsman Ravor. The tall man before you appears to be woven from tendons and muscle. Blue veins snake under his white, almost dove-colored skin, and his scalp and chin are covered in cropped white hair. His neck and shoulders are wrapped in wires that hint at the presence of neural connectors under his uniform. The officer's face seems to be twisted in a perpetual grimace of annoyance and anger, but he greets you with a respectful nod. Lord Captain, Master Helmsman Ravor at your service. Remind me, who are you, despite having just done so? I am the Master Helmsman, Lord Captain. I stand at the wheel of this here tub. I mean, your vessel. And bark commands at the idiots who tend to its related systems. In layman's terms, I'm the one who stops us from running into an asteroid, or a disruptive gravitational wave when we're traveling through the void. You control the ship in real space. I wish that was my only job. I have to steer her through the warp too, but most of the credit for that goes to the navigator. The warp's a nightmare, always tossing up something new. All my years at the helm, they count for nothing in there. My part's small enough. I just monitor our systems, follow the charted route, and I don't kick up a fuss when new orders come in from the navigator's sanctum. Real space. Now that's where I keep my eyes peeled. Gravitational anomalies, void currents, hard radiation. That kind of crap shows up everywhere. Thank the Emperor, the augurs in this vessel are holding up. So far we've been able to spot if something bad's coming our way. Who are these idiots you're in charge of? There are too many to list them all. Tech priests from the Engineerium, voidsmen from the augur decks, the work-shy fools on the bridge. I'd have every last one of them flogged. They all need a wake-up call. They need to be whipped into shape, or else the ship will be going nowhere. Or even worse, it'll go somewhere we don't want it to. That's enough for now. Right you are, Lord Captain. You are a Voidborn, are you not? That I am. Born into a helmsman clan in the bowels of a Chartist vessel. Studied the family trade until I was 15. Then my entire clan was butchered in a mutiny by lower hold scum. They spared the young'uns, of course they did. Kids with implanted connectors make great navigational servitors. But I was having none of it. They weren't going to make a servitor out of me, so I escaped into the crawlways, and then I spent months picking them off, one after the other. Ravor stops abruptly. You got me talking up a storm. Anyway, yes, I'm a Voidborn. Finish your story, Ravor. Ravor stays silent for a few seconds. Not much to tell. I gutted everyone I could get to, and then I fled upward, to the middle decks. That's where the auger operators took me under their wing. They have apprentice helmsmen of their own up there, you see. Nobody asked me any questions, so I stayed. I grew up, trained, got smarter, then ended up a junior helmsman. A dozen years later, Danrock spotted me and lured me away, the cheeky blighter. I can see you're not a Gregorius sort. Revor's eye twitches, which makes the grimace on his face even uglier. Have I done something to displease the Lord Captain? On the contrary, you're the first person on the bridge who's not tripping over themselves to lick my boots. The helmsman's perpetually twisted mouth twitches, as if he's trying to smile. It looks sinister rather than friendly. Oh yeah? Well, I'm pleasantly surprised myself that you aren't having me flogged for insubordination. But wonders never cease. Revor points at the cables around himself. Connecting wires. Once I go into the control panel, I become one with the ship. Except the bloody cogs messed up the wire's stimulus injectors and connectors when they implanted them. They twisted the wires the wrong way or burned something in my noggin. Anyway, I can't sleep. It just doesn't happen anymore. It's been 30 years of non-stop stimulants and a splitting headache. So forgive me if I'm not all smiles, Lord Captain. Tell me about the Voidborn. Revor winces and rubs his temple. Lord Captain, I mean no disrespect, but you'd better to find someone with a knack for conversation, like Ptolemy, the new Voxmaster. I ain't the talking type. I just get the ship where she needs to go. Best let folks stick to what they do best. What can you tell me about the other officers? Good-for-nothing wasters, that's what they are. Each and every one. Take generous Danrock, that highborn weasel. He fawns over the officers, but some of the deals he makes would get him burned alive. He drags other people into his schemes, so they can take the fall for him too. One of my junior helmsmen was ferrying goods from football for him, got caught by the Seneschal, and ended up in the Void Hatch. Danrock couldn't care less. The Voxmaster. Another Ptolemy like the last one, Void Restum, is no better. She cut off half the Vox channels the day she took up her post. Said the Vox systems were damaged and the Engineerium had no contact with other modules. But how am I supposed to steer the ship? Like the cogs reports with the power of my mind? First Officer Rosarian. I can't stand him. Like every Navy officer I ever met, he doesn't know a thing about controlling a vessel in the void. But he puffs himself up all the same and throws his weight around. Me and him have had to have words a few times before she left me alone. I think the Emperor, Lady Theodora, trusted me more than the Seneschal when it came to helming a void ship. Then there's that woman, what's her name? Tlass? Lady Theodora brought her along wherever she went. Look what happened to her. I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out it was that witch that delivered her to an early grave, just like countless souls before. I don't see why anyone would want that walking calamity on their ship, but some would disagree. They say she's friends with the young Ptolemy, you know. Or at least, she used to be. Tell me, do you like anyone at all? Revor looks perplexed. What kind of a question is that? I like you, and Lady Theodora before you. Where would I be if I was making cracks about the rogue trader? I don't want to die just yet. I must take my leave. Lord Captain. Revor acknowledges you with a nod and turns away. You know what? Since we're up here, let's speak to Argenta. We'll just work our way front to back. Take a look at the entire bridge. At least they have railings. I feel like that's more than you can hope for in a lot of structures in 40k. But these are important people, so in the lower decks you may not see railings.
Rogue trader.
Sister Argenta looks tired. There are dark circles under her eyes. Her hair is somewhat disheveled, and she moves like she's a little on edge. Tell me about the Adeptus Sororitas.
Gladly. There are none more faithful to the God Emperor than my sisters. We fight against his enemies by the will of the Holy Ecclesiarchy. We... I beg your pardon, rogue trader. Here I am, talking about what every lesser noble in the Imperium knows. So what exactly are you interested in hearing about?
Argenta interrupts herself and snorts. They say the Adeptus Sororitas are the fiercest in their faith among the warriors of the Imperium. Is it true?
It is. The Sisters of Battle are a fire lit by the God Emperor. They are the echo of his voice that travels through the dark expanses of the universe. We bring his wrath to heretics, mutants, and other enemies of humanity. We protect the faithful from the unholy and unhallowed. Sometimes with words, more often than not with a bolter.
Are all sisters truly as faultless as you say?
Even the novices of the Adeptus Sororitas are drawn from among the most worthy. Those who have taken the vows and become a full-fledged sister are the best of the best, tested by trials of body and spirit. Yes, there have been cases when a sister stumbled or showed weakness, but do not expect to hear a story of depravity or downfall from me.
Yeah, the only faction that hasn't had someone fall to chaos are the Grey Knights, which is a chapter of Space Marines.
Each such occurrence is a great tragedy for us all. Light cannot bear the smallest speck of darkness within. And thus those who have trespassed or shown weakness of spirit are given a chance at redemption. They are called Sisters Repentia, and may the enemy tremble before her, for nothing can stop a Sister of Battle who yearns to be cleansed of fault and weakness.
Yeah, they're an interesting faction within the Sisters of Battle, the Sisters Repentia. Also, Domain. That's how you say the word I stumbled over. I've been thinking about it and racking my brain while also trying to provide commentary and read everything. It's Domain.
Wearing nothing but robes, no armor, eviscerator in hand, those sisters who have once faltered find repentance on the battlefield. Their lives are seldom long, but a death in the name of purgation is a better fate than to live with a shadow in one's soul.
So an Eviscerator is a large, two-handed chainsword. It basically gets sent out as a berserker unit with large melee weapons to die in battle. What order are you from?
Once I had completed my novitiate, I was sent to the Calixian branch of the Order of Our Martyred Lady, assigned to the Order's Pronatus. The Order's mission is vital and noble. The Sisters Pronatus protect great relics of the Imperium. We guard them, preserve them, escort them when they are brought onto the battlefield or presented for pilgrims to venerate.
I'm willing to bet that's why she's in the Cronus Expanse. She's either here to retrieve one she lost, or just retrieve one in general.
And we seek out the relics that have been lost. Neither a coven of heretics, nor the most wicked death world can deter Sisters Pronatus when their goal is to return a piece of the great legacy of the Imperium into the hands of the faithful.
Also, I appreciate they've added more voice acting in this game than they have in their previous titles, Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. Normally these conversations with the companions aren't voice acted, so this is nice. Also lets me interject with some lore a little bit more easily than when I have to read everything myself. It's one thing to stop after they finish their little segment, but having to cut myself off to say something is awkward. Alright, the Order Pronatus is not one of the Order's militant, and yet you're a trained fighter.
Don't let the name deceive you. The Order's militant trains sisters to march onto the battlefield as an army. That does not make sisters who belong to the non-militant orders timid and helpless. Both the solace-bringing Sisters Hospitaller and the enlightened Sisters Dialogus know how to greet enemies of humanity. Their dialogue with heretics is usually quite short, with the last word being a bolter discharge. And my order has all the more reason to be known for the martial prowess of its sisters. We are the keepers of the Imperium's relics. What would become of our blessed hero's legacy if the Sisters Pronatus could not protect it?
After a short pause, Argenta adds with somewhat arrogant haste. You said you belonged to the Clixian branch of your order. What brought you to the Coronis Expanse?
The Order sent me to Footfall. My undertaking was to assist the local priesthood of Drusians in caring for a sacred reliquary that had been there since the time of Parson Mr. Wayne, the station's founder.
Are there any other members of the Adeptus Sororitas in the Coronis Expanse?
None that I'm aware of, but the Sisterhood's orders are many, and can operate independently of one another, sending their sisters wherever their presence is needed as deemed by the Ecclesiarchy. Perhaps somewhere in the Lord Inquisitor's retinue, may his path be blessed, my sisters perform their duty as we speak. I wish it were so. Even a single evening spent in joint prayer and training would bring me joy.
I have no more questions about the Sisterhood.
Should any more arise, keeping them to yourself would be imprudent. It is a virtue to take an interest in holiness.
Tell me about yourself.
About me? I am the Emperor's daughter and his servant. What else is there to tell about me?
She looks surprised. How did you end up on Theodora's ship?
I first came here when I found myself in need of passage from Footfall to a remote planet. But I imagine what interests you is not that first journey, but rather what brought me aboard prior to the pirate attack. That story is complicated. It just so happened that
Argenta's expression darkens visibly. She stops short.
I made a mistake. In a moment of laxity, I was ambushed by the accursed followers of the archenemy. I was badly wounded. Lady Theodora came to my aid and brought me aboard her ship, while her crew attended to me in my weakened state. It all happened not too long ago. I'd barely recovered from my wounds when the pirates struck. Truly, the servants of evil know no rest. There is no place where we can be safe from their machinations.
What happened to the people who wounded you? Did Theodora's men eliminate them?
Sadly, they did not. Lady Theodora was in a hurry and chose not to stay on the planet. Her people took me to a ship while I was unconscious, and when I came to my senses, we were already flying away. How I pray to come face to face with those heretics once more, and it's bound to happen someday.
You mentioned making a mistake.
It happens even to the best of us. My mistakes are my burden to bear. I'll find a way to atone for them.
Argenta says heatedly, as she frowns and lowers her head for a moment. Where did this happen?
On one of the recently discovered planets in the Expanse. No one suspected that it had already been tainted by the filth of heresy. Had I known it beforehand, of course I would have been on my guard.
We could go to that planet and deal with the Chaos Worshippers.
The path to that planet was lost. All the knowledge is gone, along with the previous navigator. It would take immense effort and resources to rediscover the route. The heir to the von Valancia's protectorate must have plenty of other issues to deal with right now. Perhaps later, when the skies above our heads have cleared.
Argenta's eyes glint. She hesitates, then shakes her head with a sigh. What was it like traveling on Theodora's ship?
I hadn't been here that long. Just one journey from Footfall, and the other journey, the majority of which I spent in the confines of the Medbay. I can't tell you much about the first voyage. I was more focused on prayers and ruminations than on the people around me, or the journey itself. During the last journey, Seneschal Viserion stood out for me. He came by several times to ask about my health. He's an honorable man and a loyal servant of the Imperium. I think he is as meticulous in his inspections of the logistics systems as he is in his inquiries about the health of the occasional sister of battle aboard the ship. But not all of Theodora's people have earned my trust. You know who I'm talking about. There is no place for Adira Tlas among the God Emperor's faithful. I'm surprised she wasn't in league with the pirates. And I'm equally surprised by how deep heresy and treason run in this place. I'm glad we all made it through that dark hour. May the day that follows be bright.
Argenta frowns and shakes her head. So I don't know if... I mean, I'm sure it's both reasons, but Argenta doesn't like Adira because she's an unsanctioned psyker, which is a big no-no in the Imperium. Because being a psyker, as we read in the description for a lot of Adira's abilities, it's a huge hazard. Has a chance of mutating the psyker, summoning demons, all sorts of bad stuff. So having unaccounted psykers within the Imperium is, I'd say, highly frowned upon, but that is really underselling it. But also, Adira has the 2 levels of heretical, which could also be why Argenta doesn't like her. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
As you wish.
What is it that's keeping you in my retinue?
This ship was targeted by heretical pirates, which means that my presence here and the assistance I provide to you are my sacred duty. Sooner or later, I will likely have to return to Footfall to protect its reliquary. But for now, I wish to remain a part of the Rogue Trader's crew.
It pleases me to have a servant of the Golden Throne in my crew. May the enemies of the Imperium tremble before our onslaught.
So they shall.
Argenta's eyes flash. You said you have a personal request for me.
I indeed have a request, Rogue Trader.
Oh, not voice acted. The accursed servants of chaos who assaulted this ship took the lives of your loyal crew members, and they orphaned many children, including the progeny of the brave officers who defended their posts until the bitter end. I don't know what customary practices there are for cases like this in Von Valancia's territory, but in the world unfamiliar with, the children of such brave souls could expect to receive some special consideration. Perhaps the Rogue Trader could meet with the orphans. But what good would meeting them do? These children are the future of your crew, and one day, they too will have to stand against evil and heresy as their parents did. By meeting them, by speaking the right words to them, you honor the memory of the fallen heroes and light the way to heroes in the making. They will always remember the day they met the Rogue Trader. Besides, they'll bolster the orphan spirits, help them recover from their loss, which can be hard for someone so young. She's probably an orphan as well. A lot of the Sisters of Battle are orphans. No, we'll be more worldly than this. For Commissar, we believe in the chain of command, and there's certain situations that require some pomp and show, but not in this one. I will meet with them. No formalities needed. These are the children of people who gave their lives for the Von Valancia's dynasty. My consideration is the least that they deserve. I'll pass on your instructions. Thank you for taking my request to heart. Oh, we're doing it right now. The motley group of adolescents do not take their eyes off of you, gazing at you as if you were a creature straight from a fairy tale. Our indefatigable sister has been keeping an eye on these pups. Abelard glances at the gathered children. There's hardly the Scala Progenium in here, but we have provided the orphans on our ship with adequate care and instruction. So the Scala Progenium, a division of the ecclesiarchy responsible for the upbringing, education, and training of orphans of those officers and nobles who have died at the service of the Imperium. Argenta is standing at the side of the group. At your approach, she perks up and announces, her voice ringing. Brave ones, the master of this ship has appeared before you, the one who guides it through the darkness of the universe by the Emperor's will. Greet your Lord Captain, the Rogue Trader of House Von Valancius. smile at the group. Your Lord Captain greets you, brave ones. Teenagers keep staring at you. A girl who has remained close to Argenta smiles uncertainly. A skinny pale lad tries to throw his shoulders back and stand at attention like a soldier. Only a few teenagers at the far end of the row seem sullen and not particularly impressed. One of the scowling visitors with the thin scar across his face tosses his head back and says bitterly, "So what? Why should we care? Our friends and parents died in their dozens for you noble lot. And you just give us speeches." Argenta quickly turns to the boy. A flare of emotions flashes in her dark eyes, like she wants both to calm him and scold him for his impudence. Yeah, I think the soldier in me would say not to be taken off topic by an outburst like that, so ignore the interruption. Rest assured, you won't be abandoned. You will be taken care of. You can tell by their bright eyes that your words and the very fact of meeting the rogue trader in the flesh have left an indelible impression on them. Young ones, you won't recognize them in a year or two. They will learn to salute and speak only when permitted by their superior officer. But right now, clowning around is all they know. Argenta rubs her temple pensively. She smiles and offers a few more words of encouragement, then leaves the bay. We'll check up with Argenta on what we just did. Also, the Scala Progenium. I hesitated, I meant to bring this up. Commissars also attended.
Greetings.
Even in stillness, Sister Argenta radiates energy. With her dark eyes shining and a slight blush to her cheeks, she's reciting a prayer, and looks at you only once she has spoken the final line. Thank you for this conversation. Until next time. Wouldn't call that a full-fledged conversation. All right, Abelard.
Lord Captain.
Abelard surveys you briskly but meticulously, as though he's inspecting you for shortcomings. Then he offers a courteous nod. Let's talk about things that may be useful to me as the rogue trader.
A noble aspiration, Lord Captain. I am ready to acquaint you with all the particulars that interest you.
Abelard nods approvingly. Outline the situation in the Cronus Expanse for me. What do I need to know and keep in mind?
This is a topic for an official briefing, not a casual conversation. But I will try to answer succinctly. And, if you permit, in my own words. The Cronus Expanse is considerably removed from the heart of the Imperium. This means that local warp routes become useless within months. Established pathways are regularly subject to attacks from all kinds of rabble. And in the only major port, the Imperium's frigates find themselves moored alongside pirate vessels.
Abelard takes a breath and begins.
Until recently, the Cronus Expanse could hardly have been called a region of the Imperium. The situation has changed with the arrival of the Lord Inquisitor, but not by much. This place operates under its own rules, you see. More radical, so to speak. But ones that allow for a non-standard approach where there is a promise of victory. The Cronus Expanse is considered rogue trader territory for a reason. Only rogue traders have sufficient military might, audacity, and the rights granted them by the warrant to survive the leap into the unexplored part of the Expanse. And in the event of a successful outcome, to hold on to whatever they manage to capture on the frontier.
Who are the main players I need to be aware of in the Coronis Expanse?
In the first instance, you should treat official representatives of the Imperium with respect. The Expanse may be on the fringes, but it still numbers among the territories of the Golden Throne. The arrival of the Lord Inquisitor has turned the Coronis Expanse into a less wild and uncontrolled region, to the regret of some individuals who had grown inured to the local lawlessness. Rogue traders such as yourself are also servants of the Imperium. They have been accorded special rights and powers. They wield immense authority within their territory, and they enjoy absolute respect in other parts of the Expanse. The most powerful of them are Kalagos Winterscale and Incendia Bastal Chora. Tread carefully when dealing with either of them. If we are to speak of unclaimed territory, which is what Footfall is, among the scum that dwells on that handful of asteroids, there are 3 factions that wield considerable influence in the sector. The first is the Kazbala Commission, organized crime in its most primitive form. It holds sway over the Liege of Footfall, and has links to rogue trader Winterscale. The second faction is an offshoot of our shining ecclesiarchy, followers of St. Drusus. They are actively building their forces, and hold influence over rogue trader Chorda. And finally, the third faction, the Explorators, a wing of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They are willing to die and kill for the secrets of the ancient technological heresies that are hidden among the stars of the Coronis Expanse.
Conrad, our previous Master of Whispers. What can you tell me about his betrayal? What do you think he'll do next?
You know, Lord Captain, I am no admirer of fine art. But when we next find ourselves in a civilized port, with time to spare, I will promptly find an artist and commission a portrait of the individual to whom you refer, with a hole between the eyes. Conrad Voigtveer. That he committed his treachery and escaped with his life was an unforgivable oversight.
Abelard winces as though from toothache, and he makes no attempt to hide his feelings.
We both served Lord Captain Theodora for many years, and we never saw eye to eye. He was brash. He was never afraid of assuming responsibility, and he willingly took on difficult tasks. I am loath to admit it, but the Von Velatius Protectorate continues to reap the fruits of his labors to this day. His service always garnered my respect. But everything else about him made me want to wring the neck of that two-faced snake.
Abelard frowns for a moment, then continues.
If you are taking comfort in the thought that we will hear no more of Conrad, prepare to be disappointed. You thwarted his plans, his meticulously plotted and nurtured treachery. He is sure to attempt to strike at you, and he will use his contacts and knowledge of the Protectorate to do so. The only question, Lord Captain, is whether you will be able to anticipate his next steps.
That is all for now.
As you wish, Lord Captain.
I'd like to know more about my seneschal.
As you wish, Lord Captain. What would you like to know?
Tell me about yourself. What were you before you became Theodora's seneschal?
I used to be an officer in the Navis Imperialis. No, I used to be is not quite right. It was not simply a job. It was my calling, the essence of my life. I was proud to serve Lord Captain Theodora, but in my heart and mind, I'm still an officer of the Imperium.
Abelard replies proudly.
I met Lord Captain Theodora on a mission where the Imperial Navy was providing reinforcement to the rogue traders' army on one of the frontier worlds. Our acquaintance was not easy. Working with people outside the Navy hierarchy has never been my strong suit. It was to my great surprise then, that after the mission's completion, I received a referral to leave my service in the Navy and join the rogue traders' personal council. It was a difficult choice for me, but I saw in the offer a chance to serve the interests of humanity even more effectively than in the Navis Imperialis. You do not need me to tell you just how remarkable a person Lord Captain Theodora was. I recognized her at once as a true leader and formidable creative force. One who had built a protectorate amidst the dangers and wildness of the Expanse.
Leaving the Imperial Navy is far from easy. Why were you permitted to quit your post? Because a rogue trader asked for it. Not a lot of people can say no to a rogue trader.
You could say there was no one among the naval command who was willing to impede the wishes of the rogue trader. To do so would be to risk their own position and their relationship with Theodora. Well, the Lord Captain possessed certain contacts in the Imperial Navy. Contacts which she used to request help during the conflict on the border world. And which enabled her to make me an offer that resulted in my joining her retinue.
Abelard chuckles. So, there's a few factions that have a lot of power, but mostly via reputation and what could happen if you don't listen to them. So the Inquisition and Rogue Traders, for instance, their power kind of balances on a knife's edge because the galaxy's so wide, and oftentimes there's no one there to back up your claims of authority. So it can be dangerous coming in and saying, oh, I'm a rogue trader, or I'm an inquisitor.
The Navis Imperialis is an ancient institution with its own mandates and muster lists. On occasion, in the heat of an official briefing, or an informal discussion, I violated those rules, determined to press my point. It is challenging to choose the words to accurately express my opinion on a situation or the actions of others that do not sound overly scathing or confrontational. Many in command were inclined to view my manner of speaking as unbefitting a person of my rank.
Abelard seems to crack slightly under your intense stare. The way you talk about Theodora, I'm beginning to think you were in love with her.
What? Lord Captain, any allegations of improper feelings or unsanctioned relations are utterly baseless and bordering on the insulting. Utterly baseless.
Abelard appears to have lost the power of speech. He furrows his brow and adds, do you have a family? Oops.
Of course. As you wish, Lord Captain. What would you like to know?
Do you have a family?
I am a widower. I am a father of 4, and if my information is not outdated, a grandfather of 11. My family lives on Dargonus. None of my children express any eagerness or aptitude for serving aboard ship, and I would hardly have insisted that they follow in my footsteps.
Abelard responds demurely. Well, thank you. I have no more questions.
Of course.
You may call me by my first name. No, I respect the chain of command. He'd probably tell me no anyway. Let's do it. You may call me by my first name, if you wish.
I thank you for the honor, but I must decline. As a former military officer, I believe in the importance of order in all things, including the chain of command. You are the Lord Captain, my direct superior. I am not prepared to address you in any way other than as regulation dictates.
I must take my leave. Until next time, Seneschal.
Lord Captain.
Abelard gives you a regulation salute. High Factotum Janus Danrock. The corpulent man in lavish clothes bows before you, not without difficulty. A servo skull whirs over his shoulder, while the fingers of his augmented hand drum against the sheaf of papers he is holding, and he regards you with an attentive interest through the lens of his magnifying implant. Greetings, your lordship. Janus Danrock at your service. Remind me, what is it you do on my ship? As the High Factotum, my duties encompass anything that might enrich you and your protectorate. I see to it that suppliers deliver all shipments on time, that our partners do not weasel out of their promises, and that all servants remember that the Emperor's grace can only be earned through toil for the good of the Von Valancius dynasty. I also make arrangements to ensure that our hold receives less than thorough inspections by port customs officers, and I find buyers for whatever you wish to sell. How did you come to serve the Von Valancius dynasty? I come from Dargonus, your lordship. I have been a subject of your dynasty since birth, and have always strived to be of use to the great rogue trader. Alas, it was not my fate to be the primary heir of my own family, due to my being 15th in line for the title. so I decided not to stand in the way of those behind me in case they attempted to shorten the waiting list at my expense. Generous lets out an almost kindly chuckle. While my brothers and sisters schemed against one another, I studied the exact sciences and mastered bookkeeping, the greatest art, the adeptus administratum. I must admit that the accumulation of wealth, something one can control, is far more exciting than hunting, carousing, and the other traditional amusements of my noble peers. What was it like working with Theodora? Oh, now that's a tricky question, your lordship. You ask it of everyone, knowing they risk losing their head should they let slip a careless remark about your predecessor? I shall put it thus. Working with Lady Theodora was never boring and always profitable. The Imperium has billions of subjects, but very few do what they love, what they are best suited to. I would say Lady Theodora was one of the fortunate ones. She was a model rogue trader, and she surrendered herself with those who excelled at and loved their work. Hers was a rare talent indeed. I wish to know what you think of your fellow crew members. Keeping tabs on your subordinates. A wise move. Tell me who interests you, and I'll endeavor to be as honest as possible. Generous's eyes light up. He is obviously eager to speak his mind. Tell me what you think of Seneschal Abelard Versarion. Lady Theodora managed to do what even the Imperial Navy could not. Teach Versarion to carry out orders that he fundamentally disagrees with. I do not know what methods she used, but the result was impressive. Having said that, there is something else you need to know, Lord Captain. Your Seneschal is capable of being something far greater than a mere conduit for your will. He possessed the cunning and experience to run the Protectorate passively whenever Lady Theodora was away. That really is saying something. Keep an eye on that old officer, I say. Or, alternatively, turn him into a faithful ally. I'd like to hear your opinion of Conrad Voigtveer, the former Master of Whispers. I hope I never see him set foot aboard this vessel again, not even as a servitor, although he would be able to do at least some good that way. Someone has to clean the latrines after all. The factotum's bloated face grows stern. He gave us all quite a fright on that ill-fated day, Lord Captain. And still, to speak candidly, I never enjoyed Master Voigtveer's company, but I believed him to be a man who knew how to do his job. Regretfully, I was mistaken. It turned out Conrad lacked the most important quality for a Master of Whispers, unwavering loyalty to the rogue trader, and his failing came to light in the most deplorable manner. What do you have to say about Vox Master Victus Ptolemy? Ah yes, the Voidborn. You know, in my family, we used such creatures as quarry whenever we went hunting. Mutants are the bane of humanity, an unseen tumor that threatens to end us all. But I digress. In the brief time Ptolemy has spent in post as Voxmaster, I have not noticed any significant flaws in her character, or anything that would make me question her professional qualities. Needless to say, she is very diligent, as is any Voidborn seeking to earn their master's affection. I believe you can trust in her skills and loyalty. I wish to discuss something else. As you say, your lordship. I want to know more about the people who buy our plunder. Of course, Lord Captain. Who interests you, exactly? We most often deal with the followers of St. Drusus, the Explorators, the Casabilla Commission, or Emperor Forgive Us, the Fellowship of the Void. What do the followers of St. Drusus acquire from us? The Drusians still hope to bring the Coronis Expanse into the warm embrace of the faith, just as their flock hopes to receive the aid of the Drusian missionaries. Each crate of food, shipment of clothes, or a box of medicine marked with your seal is a sign the rogue trader himself believes in the sect's future success. Reverend Hieronymus is the first among the Drusians and is most often seen in Footfall's grand atrium. A gloomy fellow, but some almost believe him to be a saint. Tell me more about the Explorators. Members of the Explorator Cognizance Fleet, which has been roaming the Coronis Expanse for a good while now. Omnissiah knows what they are hoping to find, but their acolytes regularly show up on inhabited worlds, seeking bits of sacred knowledge, tracking down mechanical relics, and sniffing out Xenos artifacts if truth be told. Supposedly, they want to save the ignorant rabble from corruption. A tech priest named Opticon 22 does business with us on the fleet's behalf. He can be found at the docks on Footfall. I am interested in the Casabilla Commission. Masters of the cold trade, immoral criminals, and notorious crooks to the last man. The mission is but one branch of this mafia gang that has taken root in the Calixis sector. You can do business with them as long as you take the necessary precautions. They're led by Vladimir Tokara, who recently appointed himself Liege of Footfall. Of course, he is a trusted ally of rogue trader Winterscale, but he will not refuse you, another of the Emperor's anointed. If you wish to talk to Vladimir, look for him in the Liege's Palace in Footfall. But what is this Fellowship of the Void? Generous emits a laugh-like gurgle. A pompous name, is it not? In truth, they are a gang of pirates who are forever squabbling over loot and territory. However, some of their little flotillas need supplies, or can take awkward cargo off our hands without asking questions. Of course, there is always a risk that these scoundrels will change their mind and attempt to board us instead, but so far our macro cannons have managed to keep them in line. They say Riza Calvaria speaks on the Fellowship's behalf. The Adeptus Amasekis on Footfall is rumored to be her favorite haunt. Why are we giving away our spoils to these people in the first place? To profit from them, of course. Most of the things you will find during expeditions are complete junk to one such as yourself, but the less fortunate and affluent servants of the Emperor think them treasures, especially when they are bestowed by the great rogue trader himself. Drushan fanatics and pirate cutthroats, Casabilica dealers and explorators, none will refuse our help in these dark and trying times. And there may come a time when we shall be the ones requiring aid, and it would be beneficial to have allies willing to provide it. I suggest we change the subject. Certainly, Lord Captain. I wish to bolster my retinue with skilled fighters. Rest assured, there are people of the most outstanding talents among the thousands of your crew. I'll contact the overseers at once. So we can hire mercenaries here. And the High Factotum Generous Danrock greets you with a cool smile and the merest hint of a bow. Pleasure to see you, Lord Captain. How may I be of assistance? And we can respec here. My retinue and I are in need of training. I'll show you our sparring chambers at once. Alright, enough questions for now. I shall return later. I shall await your instructions, Lord Captain. Alright, I think Adira is the last person to talk to on the bridge. The tall, middle-aged woman stares straight ahead, her eyes vacant as she rubs the implant at her temple. Her collar is undone, and one of the clasps is on the verge of falling off. Sensing your presence, Adira turns her head toward you and offers you a crooked smile, even as her eyes look right through you. Adira, about your abilities.
What are you talking about, Lord Captain?
With a noticeable effort, Adira focuses her eyes on you. She lets out a nervous laugh. You are a Psyker. Psykers are only granted the right to live with the Emperor's blessing. Have you ever been to Terra?
Look, Lady Theodora couldn't care less if some eggheads measured my brains or not. It's not about the seal on your forehead, get it? It's about what's in your gut, if it's rotten or not. My gut's stronger than the adamantine on this here ship. And my implants are better than the ones they put in you on your Terra. If they weren't, I wouldn't have lived as long as I have.
Adira says nothing for a few seconds, and then exaggeratedly rolls her eyes. Adira bares her teeth in a savage grin, a febrile gleam in her eye. There's also a good chance that if she did make it to Terra in one of the black ships, she would have been sacrificed to the Emperor. I think it's 1,000 Psykers a day are fed to the Golden Throne to keep it powered and keep the Emperor kind of alive. Where do you come from?
Lyra, an outlying world in the Heathen Stars region. In the Coronis Expanse, the deeper you go, the less visible the Astronomicon gets, and the less people know about the Imperium. The arrival of a rogue trader is the best thing that can happen to a world like that. The very best.
The Astronomicon is a beacon. It's on Terra, and it's powered by a ton of Psykers. And it acts as basically a lighthouse for navigators in the warp to know where Terra's at, and it helps to navigate the warp. Actually, we can just hover over it. The psychic beacon that helps navigators to triangulate a course for their void ships through the warp. But it didn't tell you there was on Terra. It doesn't give you all the other details. Tell me about Lyra.
It's an out-of-the-way planetoid between two faint stars. On Lyra, a dozen local tyrants fight over 5 measly continents. But they use everything they can to win, from poison to psychers. I haven't been there in many years, but there's nothing for me to miss. Trust me.
Adira begins wringing her shaking hands.
But here on the ship is a different story altogether. I saw more wonders in my first year serving Lady von Valancius than I'd seen in my whole life on Lyra. Like my first journey through the warp, I was in bed for 3 days. I felt like supernovas were exploding in my head. I only found out later that I'd gotten off easy. Just through the bulkhead in the bay next to mine, a whole team turned into... Look at me rambling on, Lord Captain. Pay no attention.
Adira breaks off. You never finish your story about your first time crossing the warp.
It wasn't like it was a very fun trip, Lord Captain. But look, if you want to be entertained, I'm the woman for the job. I'll entertain you with one of the stories from my collection, no problem. But if you want to hear about the time I melted everyone in the bay next door, well, I just don't really want to go into the details on that one, alright?
Adira rubs her nose. What did you do before you came to be on the ship?
Oh, I embroidered wall hangings in honor of our national heroes. I did the same thing I do here, Lord Captain. Divining. Our rulers prized the ability to see into the future. Every psyker that could be found was worth a small fortune on Lyra.
Adira cackles.
There's no such thing as a peaceful life on Lyra. People like me were especially sought after. They'd pick psychers up wherever they found them, buy kids off their parents, even just abduct them. Take me, for instance. I got taken from my street gang. The older kids sold me when they noticed there was something off about me. The ruling dynasties had schools where they trained us and beat us black and blue. And then they packed us off to serve. Some of us held on for a long time, but others didn't last. Not everyone's as smart and talented as me, you know. Some people crossed the line and were out of commission before their time.
Adira looks at you expectantly, then, as though clarifying, uses her hands to indicate a head exploding and laughs. How do you end up in the Rogue Trader service?
Theodora von Valancius paid a visit to the ruler I was serving at the time. I don't know what the visit was for, and it's no business of mine anyway. I can still remember the way the voices in my head changed when I looked at her. They were practically screaming. She had so much behind her, and plenty ahead of her too.
Adira squints, as though she's peering at something far away.
As I gawped at her, all of a sudden I heard a whisper. A hint, a suggestion, nothing more. But I know the difference between idle chatter and a real threat. I seized my chance and approached Theodora. I managed to whisper a couple of words in her ear before the wardens dragged me away. They beat me and locked me up. No wonder. It wasn't my place to converse with outsiders. And then Theodora's people came for me. They broke down the wall, butchered the guards. Also, I could tell them my warning in full. So I said the rest, but I didn't want to go back to my old life. And so I entered the service of the von Valancius dynasty.
Have you ever been off the ship? And that's a obvious yes.
A few times. Not many. And if I think about it, why would I want to? I've got everything I need here. All the whispers I hear are familiar ones. They almost feel like family. And if I want to hear about the nightmares off the ship, I can. After some Amisec. But don't go getting the wrong idea. If I have to, I'll follow you to the edge of the galaxy.
Adira winces and rubs her eyes. Let's talk about something else.
Of course, Lord Captain.
Got a new story for me, Adira.
You bet I do, Lord Captain.
Adira becomes much more animated, and her expression turns slightly dreamy as she recalls one of her stories.
Okay, so we went to Footfall once. Well, I mean, Lord Captain Theodora went to Footfall a lot. But on that occasion, she took me with her for some reason. My day had gotten off to a bad start. My head had been yammering since I woke up, but there was nothing else for it. I had to go. We arrived at the place, and what a place! All the gentlemen and ladies dressed to kill, showing off their encrusted implants, all clustered around little tables. Well, turned out it was a gaming den. And not just any gaming den, but one run by somebody with deep pockets for people with just as much cash to splash. You should have seen it. People gambling away planets in a game of regicide. Anyway, so the Lord Captain wanted me to help her beat some guy. So I tell her, the chips won't land in your favor. You'll get a bad hand. Don't sit down at that table, your ladyship. But did she listen? Of course she didn't. If there's one thing she never lacked, it's stubbornness. So they sat down and the cards were dealt. I'm hovering around like I'm not involved, but I'm keeping my eye on things. And everything in my head keeps getting louder and louder. Anyway, it's a good thing I realized in time that my mind wasn't going haywire over a losing hand, but something else. I made some excuse to drag the Lord Captain up from the table and took her away from that place. And a few minutes later, the room where we'd been... It turned out some wise guy had the same bright idea to bring a pet psyker along with him. One of those ones who just scuttle around in Footfall's underbelly. And the psyker just freaked out, I guess. After all the commotion, people went to see what happened in the room. And they'd all gone for each other's throats. Literally. With teeth. And I think they completely detached that asteroid from Footfall and pushed it off into open space so it would head off toward the local star.
Adira can't help herself and bursts out laughing. Weeping, Adira wipes away a tear. What's it like being a psyker?
Lord Captain, forgive me. But it would be like talking to a person born blind about colors. I could spend hours explaining, but it wouldn't make any sense to you.
Adira tilts her head to one side, as if listening closely to something.
Every psyker feels their connection with the warp in their own way. One person might see spots and shadows out of the corner of their eye. Another feels fingers running down their spine. As for me, I've got a door in my head. One that's open just a crack. There's no way to close it, no matter how hard I try. I've just had to get used to the whispers from the other side. When I need to use it for work, I listen in more closely. But I usually just try not to notice it.
How do you live with this whispering in your head?
Training, habit, and a little amasec and a couple other things you can get on the lower decks. If you put all those together, it makes things bearable. Sometimes I even wonder if I'm imagining half the voices I hear. You know, when life on board gets a little boring. Better than listening to the living, anyhow.
Adira shrugs and chuckles. What would happen if your door burst open?
Well, if the door opens, that means somebody's planning to come in, right? But screw them. They're not coming through. Trust me. I know how to keep my valuable head locked up tight.
Adira chuckles, but there's a shrill, strained quality to her laughter. Aren't you afraid of losing control?
Only losers who are afraid of their own gift lose control. Or idiots who never figure out what they are before it's too late. Or little kids who want to play around with their shiny new toy. If you don't know the limits of your abilities, or you're always bouncing around in your own head, that's a recipe for disaster.
Can you see my future?
All right. That's what I'm here for, after all. So, I'm just going to lean on that door in my head a little more, prick up my ears, and listen to what the warp's got to say about you. If you'll allow it, I can listen right now.
Adira wrinkles her nose and looks around. As she wipes her hands, gives her head a shake, and finally nods. Adira grins like she's already heard some salacious detail. Sure.
All right. Let's hear what they're whispering about you.
Adira laughs, rubs her hands together, and suddenly freezes with a vacant smile on her face, her head slightly tilted. You feel goosebumps appear on your skin, and your collar begins to waver ever so slightly, as if moved by a breeze from a half-open door.
Seek not on firm ground, but in a golden hall suspended in the void. There waits a child without kin, but with a name blind to truth. She draws the brush across the canvas and does not notice that her palette is full not of paint, but of blood. And with each smear, this well does not deplete, but fills and fills up to the brim. One thing is clear. When this vessel overflows, none will remain unstained.
Okay, I'm just gonna try and decipher this a bit. So, firm ground, but in a golden hall suspended in the void. I think that's talking about our ship. The child without kin, I'm gonna guess, is Argenta, because I speculated that she's an orphan herself, hence her empathy towards the other orphans on the ship.
Among the blind men and false prophets, a red-robed sage seeks the answer to a question. He does not know that it is not the answer he must seek, but the question that will draw everything into focus. Will you help him, rogue trader? But mark that sometimes ignorance is sweeter than oblivion.
So Red Rib Sage is probably talking about a tech priest. One we haven't met yet.
A chained hound chases after glimmers of the aurora, but sparks in the scent of oil confound his nose. The chain trails after him. What will happen if you pick it up? Will you become his master? Or merely another beast in the pack of his true lord?
Alright, so in the game art for this, we see a Space Wolf companion. We already know that's someone that's going to show up. Assumably that's what, or who this is about.
The glow of dawn bursts forth from its prison. Dungeon walls cannot contain the dark essence wallowing in the dust. A naive cub pushes his nose into a familiar hand, one that holds death in twisted glass. Cherish it or cast it off as a burden. The sword of change has already been raised. What is one more life to it?
Not sure about this one yet.
I'm sorry, Lord Captain. The voices are going wild. I can't make out a thing. I'll try to rein them in, somehow. But for now...
Adira strains to listen, then frowns and shakes her head. The Psyker shrugs sheepishly and sniffs. I'd like to hear your augury, Adira. What awaits me in the future?
All right. Let's hear what they're whispering.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Lord Captain. The voices are going wild. I can't make out a thing. I'll try to rein them in, somehow. But for now...
Did you know Theodora von Valancius well?
None of the officers knew the Lord Captain well. Not even Abelard, and she was always closer to him than anyone else. She told me from the off that if I ever listened to anything in the warp about her without her permission, I'd be going out through the airlock. I'm not an idiot, so I never stuck my nose where it didn't belong. Only when I was asked.
Adira shakes her head.
It's hard to wrap my head around the fact that she's gone. Lady von Valancius gave me everything I have. She opened the stars to me and the paths between them. I still think I can hear her voice.
Adira's eyes darken and a strange, otherworldly expression comes over her face. Adira lets out a sharp breath and shakes her head. Things are strained between you and Argenta. Isn't that right?
The little sister is afflicted with her own set of voices. Ones that whisper to her about corruption and heresy. The silly girl doesn't realize that if she wants to find the source, she needs to start by looking in her own head.
Adira falls silent, and then in a different voice adds, I must take my leave.
Of course. Always at your service. Whenever you need me.
Alright, I think that's everybody on the bridge to speak to, right? Nice. Well, next time, we'll go to our quarters and check that out. And then check out the Coronis Expanse map. Alright, well, I'm gonna call it here for now. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you guys in the next one.